Hey everybody, hope you're doing good today. Neil the Knife Guy here. Just got in some knives that I bought from eBay. Some Victorinox. Got these three for a very good deal. Actually got, which one was it here? This one here and this one here in a lot. And then this one separately. I think I paid 14 for this one, and these two together I think were 21. That's with shipping and everything. eBay is a really great place to find Swiss Army knives on the cheap. You could usually find them used for a very discounted price, and most of the times they don't really need too much work to get them back functioning like they were new. Swiss Army knives literally last a lifetime, and even with hard use, they still survive over many, many years. The one I'm going to be focusing on today will be this one here. In the description, the eBay seller said the scales were loose and more than likely needed replacing, and he was correct on that. I could just sort of separate these with my finger, which usually you can't do with the sides or scales on a Swiss Army knife. They're really pressed on there, and when they're sort of new, you can't really pry them off just with your fingers. You need a little help from a tool. So today I'm going to be going through basically a maintenance of this knife, everything from sharpening the blades, scissors, and can opener. I'm going to be cleaning it, soaking it in water, wiping it out, all that good stuff, and actually replacing the scales. So in this video you'll see a little bit of all that. So first thing I'm going to do with this is sharpen up the blades. I'm going to be using the Spyderco Sharp Maker for this. Don't really need to use the diamond rods on Victorinox's steel. It's soft enough that it's very easy to sharpen just with these gray or brown stones, some people call them. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to probably use the 20 degree per side setting on the Sharp Maker. Like to keep a fairly steep edge on these knives because the steel is soft, and since it is so very easy to sharpen, just a slight stropping usually brings it back to hair popping sharp. Just going to take your marker here and go along the edge to see where I'm hitting, to see how much work I do have to do on this. Got this sort of centered here. I can tell already this is going to be a little awkward to do around the camera, so I'm just going to move the tripod a little bit. Just give it a couple swipes on each side just to see where I'm removing that marker from. I'm actually going to have to do this right through the camera. I can't see around my camera right now. Not pressing hard whatsoever on this. You're better off letting the stones do the work instead of putting excess force onto them. Looks like I am hitting the actual edge on that 40 degree setting. So just going to continue here. And through my experience with this steel, I found it's better to sort of leave it a little bit more toothy. Tends to stay sharper longer that way. So I'm only going to be using these actual gray stones. With a knife sort of this style and blade thickness, not really a thick blade, I tend to like a toothier edge. Just makes cutting sort of tougher materials a little bit easier and sort of prolongs your edge life. When you have a toothy edge, cutting things like plastic straps, zip ties, that sort of thing, tends to bite in more, and you don't have to apply as much force as you do with a polished edge. So honestly, that's probably good right there. Feel it definitely biting into my skin. So I'm going to do that off camera also with the small blade, and I'll be right back just to show you how to do the scissors and the can. So for the can opener, you don't really need a shaving edge. Actually, it would be sort of detrimental to the tool to actually have a very sort of razor edge on your can opener. You're going into metal. You don't want to sort of chip out, bend over the edge on here. What you do want is a nice crisp edge on this, no sort of flat spots if you could help it. And you could see a couple flat spots right in here. If my camera would stay focused, you could sort of see it there. So same thing as with the blades, just going to mark the edge on it, both sides. And using the same stone, just freehand. Let's see how I could do this so you guys could see it. Just try and match the angle. And just do a couple light passes with the corner of the stone. Like I said, you're not looking for a razor edge on this. Just a nice, crisp, clean edge. That should be good for that side. The can opener on Swiss Army knives, whether it be my spirit tool or just regular ones like this, do really see a lot of use. I don't have a normal can opener in my house at all, so I tend to exclusively use the Victorinox can opener, and more than a few times at work have raced coworkers using this with the ones they're using is just the normal crank ones, and often open the can before them. You can get very efficient using these can openers, and it's not really a struggle to get the can opener. It takes a little bit of technique, but open a couple cans and you can sort of master it, and usually maybe not impresses people, but they get a kick out of it seeing one of these in use the proper way. Just going to do a couple lighter passes, alternating sides. Don't think there's a burr. I don't think I pressed hard enough or did enough work on it to create a burr, but you don't really need to raise one anyway. So that's good enough there. You could hear it sort of on my finger. And that's really all you're looking for. So with the scissors, It's a very easy process also. Just take your marker. You don't need to use a marker, but I really do like using this color on technique. Lets you know where you're hitting, and it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And for this, all you're doing is trying to match up your angle. I will be actually using the flat of the stone this time. You can see there I'm getting rid of all the marker off the complete edge of it. And then once you're done on one side, all you want to do is just put your stone flat, raise it up a tiny little bit, and with the lightest pass you can, just give it a couple strokes on the backside. Some people just sharpen on this side and will just close the scissors a couple of times to get the burr off. I've done that. It works just the same as doing it this way. And that's back to sharp already. So I'm going to do the same on the other side here. These scissors don't really need much work at all. Don't think they were used too much. Just sort of showing you how you would sharpen your scissors. Give it a couple swipes on the back side here. And it should be good. I'm just going to grab this here. That's the only thing I have around. A box of paper clips. Good to go. So next up, I'll show you how to remove the scales. So far we sharpened the blades, can opener, scissors. To take off the scales, I'm going to show you how to do it when the scales are on actually tight. You want to remove your toothpick and tweezers, and if you do have a straight pin in that little hole, remove that also. What I use is another Swiss Army knife. And the tool I do use is the actual can opener, because you could get under the scales with the actual edge of the can opener, and it makes it quite easy to do. So what I do is I slip the little flathead portion into the cavity where the either toothpick or tweezers go, and you just want to work it around and pop it off. You seen that came off very easy. Like I said at the start of the video, these scales were loose. I could just do it with my fingernail. But you would use this, get under there, and go along the entire edge just to pry it up gently. Now you can reuse the scales, but they will be loose. So much so that just the spring tension from the tweezers here will actually separate the scales again. So if you're going to do this and take off the scales, just be aware that you might have to replace them, or if not, that they might just come off spontaneously. In general, the scales aren't removable, and you could put them back on and there'll be no problems. In general, you will have to replace them. So with the scales off, this is what the knife looks like. You can do all the cleaning underneath, and if you do carry your Swiss Army knife often, this will get fairly dusty, linty. So I'm going to go fill up a thing with water, just a little container full of water, warm soapy water, and just show you how to deep clean one of your Swiss Army knives. Alright, so I've had this soaking for about 20 minutes now. Every now and then just sort of give it a swish back and forth. This is just warm water with a little bit of dish detergent added. And the reason you want to just sort of do this and switch it around is to get the water and the soap into every little crevice so that you could get the, if there's any existing oil and debris in there, out of it. And then what I do usually is open each tool a couple times. If you have a really sort of sticky or dirty action to it, to where it doesn't want to snap like it is now, maybe just under the water, open and close it a couple times, and that'll get the water in there and clean it out for you. I find this multi-purpose hook kind of tough to get out with the little lanyard loop there. It sort of blocks this thumb nick to get it out. The one tool that was very stiff and very sort of grimy was this reamer awl here, and I could definitely feel that it's loosened up. Usually these are the nail breakers of a Swiss Army knife, but this one's nice and loose, I'm happy to say. So just going to take this over to the sink, rinse it out. I use hot water just from the tap. It's not going to harm the steel at that temperature whatsoever, and the hotter the water, the easier it is going to be to dry. It'll sort of dry itself off. Just rinse it under the water, open up all the tools, rinse it under the water, shake it off a few times, and then probably within a minute it'll dry most of it off itself, just because the warm water will evaporate easier. And then go in it with a piece of paper towel and sort of swab out the rest of it. Gonna actually do that now and be right back. So just finished rinsing this out. It's pretty much dry. Just gonna fold up all the tools here. Take a dry piece of paper towel. Just give it a quick wipe down. The good thing about Victorinox is their stainless is relatively resilient, so you don't really have to get too crazy with actually drying it off. Most of the warm, hot water will dry itself off. You just want to get any lingering sort of dampness out of all the crevices. And what I use to actually get down deep into the sort of wells of it is take one of your toothpicks, just rip off a little square of paper towel, maybe fold it a couple times, take your toothpick, fold the paper towel over it, and that'll let you get down into the sort of wells for all the tools. This will also take out any sort of metal shavings, filings that are left over, and you can see there if my camera would focus some of the grime that's left. That's just basically from the tools rubbing, whether it's against the liners or in the pivot area. Just want to get down into the grooves the nooks and crannies, as it were. I could tell the action on this is already better, and there's no oil in it. So this is going to have a nice snap to all the tools once I'm done. Just looking closely, see if I see any moisture left. I think we're good. You can see the grime that came out of there. Not really grime, it's just sort of metal shavings. Next up would be oiling of it. You do always want to oil it when you've cleaned it like I've done. The oil I usually use for most of my knives is just your regular 3-in-1. But that's more in like modern folders. The oil I do like to use in Swiss Army knives is just your standard mineral oil. I do use a lot of this for food prep on the can opener for opening cans, obviously. So I do use mineral oil. It's not going to be toxic whatsoever, pretty much inert with any sort of food. So that's the reason I use this. And all I do to oil it is, with all the blades closed, just put a little drop. And you don't need much in each of the sort of, I don't know what you'd call that, on the tang of each tool. Drop, drop. And then just open it and close them a couple times, get that oil worked in there. The action of that screwdriver and bottle opener definitely loosened up nicely. Scissors here, just give them a work back and forth. And then for these top tools, just along this portion here, maybe point with this, along here, just put a little drop. Whoa, that was a little too much. Just gonna dab that. And do the same, open it up, close it. So it's pretty much oiled now. What I'll do typically is fold up another little square of paper towel just to get any excess out of there. You don't want excess oil, especially in a knife like this where it's going to be floating around your pocket for the most part. Oil will tend to grab onto any sort of dust or dirt and trap it in the knife, which you're trying to avoid. So just gonna swab all the areas here. You will get some, I call it bleed out, no matter how little oil you get. And you've noticed this if you ever gotten a Swiss Army knife new, how when you open it and close it, there'll be a little bit of oil left on the tang of each tool. You could probably see it. Just in this area here. And what you do over time is just give it a little wipe and it'll sort of work itself out. So we got the knife cleaned, oiled, took the scales off, sharpened up all the stuff that needs to be sharp. Next is putting the scales on. So lastly would be putting on new scales. I ended up buying these sapphire scales. These aren't plus scales. Didn't have any plus scales left where I bought these, so I ended up just going with these. Got these from Swiss Bianco, Canada. Awesome guy to deal with, Alexi. Dealt with him 4 or 5 times now, and always quick shipping, always just top-notch service. Got the 2 scales and this mini screwdriver that goes in the corkscrew. With this and the 2 scales and shipping, it was under 14 bucks. Just sends it letter mail. So shipping is never really expensive through him, and he's a hell of a guy to deal with. Putting these on can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes they go on pretty easy, sometimes they're a little bit of a pain. Before you put these on, you want to make sure all your sort of rivet points are sort of free of obstructions. You don't want anything under that sharp lip to impede putting these scales on. I'm going to try to do this by hand. If I can't do this by hand, I'm going to have to either get a pair of vice grips. If you have a vice, putting a little bit of padding on it, that's usually the best way to do this. Don't have a vice available to me, so I'm going to try to do it by hand. You just want to sort of pick a side that you want to start with. I'm going to start with the corkscrew side for this and just see how I sort of make out. And if you see yourself sort of struggling, you only really get one shot at getting these on. And what I do is sort of line up the rivet points. You'll be able to tell when you're sort of hovering above the hole. And you will have to really squeeze these on. And I'm putting a lot of force into that. I think both sides are on. Then you want to go to the middle. Sometimes you'll hear an actual audible click to them going on. Sometimes you won't. You just want to sort of make sure all the way around the scale there's no gaps. No sort of, like you could see right up here there's a gap. So I'm going to have to press that in a little more. Just over here. There's a gap here. It's just a lot of sort of do one side, it raises the other, push on the other side, it raises the middle, and you just gotta go around the scale, making sure, like I said, there's no gaps in between the scale and the actual side liner. This one looks, I'm going to take it off camera for a sec. This one looks like I'm going to actually be able to do it just by hand, which is always nice. Just going to open up the corkscrew to get it seated around there. Let's take this off camera. I'm going to have to look at it really closely here because I want to get this right. Doing it by hand also, you sort of avoid the risk of scratching it up. I've done it with a pair of vice grips before where I actually take just, you could use a sock, any sort of cushion that you won't actually scratch up the scales, and you just do what I did by hand. I do have pretty strong hands, a lot of manual labor in my past and present, and a lot of actual guitar playing. You can see a gap just right here. And I think that might be because the scale or the liner here is a little bit deformed. I don't know if you could see that. Where's that little toothpick? Right here you can see that it sort of bulges out and then goes back in. This was a used knife, so it's not going to be too perfect. It was actually used, this knife. But I think, if I am not mistaken, that it's actually on. Yep. So that side's on. I love that blue color. I have it on my deluxe tanker and just really love that sapphire. Really all the see-through Victorinox scales are really nice. The black onyx one, sort of harder to find nowadays. Remember last year or the year before when I put the new ones on my deluxe tanker, they were in stock. Can't seem to find them in stock now. And pretty much the same with the other side. Make sure you're lined up with all the rivets. And just press it down. This side seems like it's going to be a little tougher. Oh, there she goes. You see right through the scale there, so you know you got a little bit of ways to go. But you really do see how once you get these on, they're on there pretty darn good. I think the middle part still has a ways to go. Just this rivet here. Definitely a lot of grunting going on in this video. Just gonna walk my thumbs around the entire edge. Still a little ways. I'm gonna have to take this off camera again. But you get the point, right? You're just basically squeezing the hell out of it. And if you take your thumb and forefinger, index finger, squeeze with that, but also squeeze with your other hand on those fingers, it tends to work really well also. But like I said, if you got a vise, this goes a lot quicker. Just do pay attention if you're using a vise that you don't want to push too hard, because you could just bend these in, the two scales, and you could sort of screw up the tool. Got a little bit of a gap over here. And I think that does it. And a little bit more on the side. A little bit more at the top. And I think that's it, actually. There's no lips catching. Yep. So you got your really nice blue scales on there. Put your toothpick back in. Put your tweezers back in. And then also the little eyeglass screwdriver. And it's done. So that's just how you put on the scales. Like I said 4 or 5 times now, you have a vise, it goes a lot easier. If you don't have a vise, you could do what I did. Sometimes it's a little tougher, so you could just wrap some padding around a pair of vise grips or pliers. Something that will press on it sort of flatly, if that's an actual word. Just over each rivet. You'll have to go around it a few times like you've seen me do, just to get everything nice and seated right. But once you do, you got a pretty much brand new looking, at least on the outside, Swiss Army knife. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. hope you enjoyed it. Quite a long video, I know. If you stuck through it this long, thank you very much. Really liked making this video. It was actually pretty fun to do. So thanks for watching this, guys, and definitely stay tuned for more videos. Thanks a lot.